This is Sharon Kendrew, President and CEO of High Road Incorporated, and you're listening to the business side of music.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
On the show with us today, all the way from Los Angeles, California, Paul Loeb, who is a seasoned executive in the music and technology industries, best known as the founder and CEO of DropTrack, which we're going to talk about today here on the show, which is a cutting-edge AI-powered music promotion platform. With over 2 decades of experience, Loeb's journey in the music industry has been marked by his passion for music, technical expertise, and a relentless drive to innovate. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Bob, for having me.
This conversation you and I are having could literally not come at a better time, at least a more unique time, because AI is the buzz these days. That's pretty much all you hear about is this artificial intelligence and how it's going to take over the world, and, you know, it's going to be Terminator 3, but it's not that scary, is it?
Well, you know, that's a good topic to discuss for sure. I think there's a lot of concern that people have about any new technology. People were afraid of the printing press. People were afraid of the internet. You know, AI is next in line of one of these big technologies that's going to have a big impact on humans, and it's going to impact everyone. So should we be worried about it? I don't think so. Should we learn what we can and use this technology to help us be better, more efficient, more creative in what we can accomplish as individuals? Absolutely. And, you know, in the music space, which, as you mentioned, I'm very passionate about, there's been a lot of talk about using AI to generate music, which is really cool. You know, using AI to create a song or put the voice of some songwriter or performer on a song that you would never expect. And the options for creativity are endless, and I think very exciting. What we're doing with my company, DropTrack, is using AI for music promotion and helping artists market their music and get it heard by a bigger audience. So AI, I think, is a big term. There's a lot that falls under that. It doesn't have to be scary. And in fact, we can use AI to help us succeed at our goals.
I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate for the moment, if you don't mind. I know that Hollywood is very concerned about AI at the moment. I also know that the record business, justifiably so or not, along with any person that is a creative content provider, there's almost this mystification, if that's a word that I can use, where they're going to lose their job because AI is going to take over. You, at the same time, are talking about creating a process, a program where those creative content providers, someone who's written a song, an artist who's promoting, they can use this program that you have to their benefit. Am I right?
Absolutely. I don't think we should think of AI or any technology as putting people out of work. I think that's where it starts to get a little doomsday and scary when you go down that line of thought. What I think is a better way to frame it is people who are doing this work, musicians who are creating, lawyers who are drafting agreements, you know, in almost every industry that's going to be impacted by AI. Those who leverage the new technology and let it help them and accelerate what they can do are going to win. and the ones who don't use the new technology are going to get left behind. And I think that is, it's not the AI that's going to put people out of work. It's people who use the AI to their benefit to help them are going to put the other people out of work. And I think that's just the way innovation goes. And that's why it's exciting now to learn about this new technology and try to be, some of the first to really leverage this technology and not be afraid of it.
Let's talk about your company that you created. How did that actually come about? Was this something you had been plotting a course for a while, or was this something that just all of a sudden was a light bulb went off in your head, or how did this come about?
It's a good question. So DropTrack is a music promotion company. We help artists and record labels promote their music, get it heard by a bigger audience, and help them achieve success in the music business, whether that is getting signed to a label, getting their music played on the radio, getting featured in a popular magazine, getting placed on popular Spotify playlists. We help our artist and record label customers achieve those goals. I started the company because I used to have my own record label. Out of college, I started a label to promote my own music that I was producing, as well as talented friends that I knew that could make really great music but didn't know how to take the next step in marketing the music, getting it out into the world. And I thought that it was so good that I wanted to help them, push it out there. One of the struggles I learned through running the record label is you can't just have great music, right? You put it out on iTunes or Spotify, and then what, right? How do you compete against the thousands of other great songs that are put out every single day? And the answer is you have to market, you have to promote, you have to pay a lot of times for this sort of marketing. And as an independent label, the options at the time, and still to some extent for independent labels, are to pay a consultant. And this is like a DJ promoter or a playlist promoter these days, or a club, DJ programmer. And you pay them a fortune, basically as a consultant. They promote your music on their behalf. And I felt like a lot of this was throwing money down a black hole. Sometimes they would follow up, sometimes they wouldn't. It was very hard to tell if what they were doing was actually working. And I thought there has to be a better way. So I decided I'm going to build my own version of a system that can help me do this promotion to DJs specifically on my own, and then not have to pay this third-party DJ consultant as a record label. And I was able to do this because I have a background in technology and programming. I've been a big nerd since the 90s. I've been making websites and apps and have worked as a software engineer for companies like Apple. And so I took what I had learned and built my own system. And long story short, it worked. I was able to use the software that I built to promote the music on my label and get it placed in movies, in TV shows, heard by millions of people in popular DJ radio shows. And it worked for me to the extent that I thought, wow, this has been something that I was able to use. It would also be useful for other record labels, for other independent artists. And that's when the genesis of DropTrack as a company was born, and I turned it into a product. And we've been growing ever since. That was in 2016, so 7 years ago. And yeah, so it didn't come all at once. It's been a work in progress to build the company. It wasn't something that you flip the switch and overnight we have all of these features and we're using AI to help musicians promote their music. Overnight, it's been a journey to get to where we are, learning what we can from our customers and the feedback they give us to help them be more successful in their musical journey.
One of the things that you mentioned a little earlier in this conversation was reaching a larger audience. How do you go about doing that? And I'll preface that by saying that record labels for decades have really fine-tuned the art of promotions. And of course, that is towards terrestrial radio. And then I think in recent years to satellite radio. Maybe I'm a bit hesitant to say this, maybe not. Kicking and screaming into the streaming world too, because that's obviously a whole new dynamic the record companies didn't see on the horizon 10 years ago. But when you talk about reaching a larger audience, who is that audience, and have they been looked over in the past? Have they missed out?
So I think you raise a good point that the labels have figured out promotion, and when it comes to terrestrial radio, for decades. And when we're talking about labels in this context, we're really talking about the major labels. For independent labels, it's always been a little bit of a different story. And there's a bunch of different outlets where independent labels have had more success in promoting their music, maybe college radio versus the more like terrestrial pop stations in a big city. However, what we've seen with our independent artists and independent labels that we work with for the most part is that there are ways to attract a bigger audience with a much smaller budget and without having all the connections already that these major labels have built up over decades. One of the strategies that we work with our clients on, in particular when it comes to playlist placements, is the strategy around like which playlist do we target? You know, on Spotify, there's the algorithmic driven playlist like Discover Weekly. There's the editorial driven playlist where people at Spotify actually pick the songs for the playlist. And then there's, you know, millions of these user generated playlists that can be created by a blog or just Joe Schmo who decides to make a playlist and share it with the world. And the major labels have spent a lot of money influencing and are able to get repeated placement on the Spotify owned playlist, right? The Mint, the very popular playlists that are editorial driven at Spotify. However, that's not where the bulk of listening of Spotify listener hours actually are. Most people are listening to the algorithmic driven playlist. They're listening to Discover Weekly. They're listening to Release Radar, New Music Friday. These playlists that are not hand selected by anyone, but instead driven by what Spotify's algorithm thinks you're most likely to want to listen to. And in order to get on these playlists, one of the factors that Spotify really takes into consideration is how many of these third-party independent playlists is this music added to. They take that as a sign of quality. If this song is so good that all of these third-party playlists are adding it to the playlist, let's try putting it in these algorithmic driven playlists. Test it out, see if people respond to it. If they do, we're going to keep putting it higher and higher up on the playlist until it reaches the level where it breaks through to a more mainstream audience. So that's just one example of how we like to work with independent artists that maybe don't have access or haven't traditionally had the same access to, you know, terrestrial DJ programmers, but even like the Spotify editorial playlist. But still, there's an opportunity to, you know, not game the system, but play very much into what Spotify is looking for in terms of building an audience organically, adding it over time to more and more playlists that bubbles it up to the top of their list.
And of course, we're talking about the independent label. We're talking about the independent artists. As you said, the major labels, they've pretty much, over the past 5, 6, 7 decades, they figured this all out as best as they've been able to. And for the most part, have been successful. When we talk about the independent label and we talk about the independent artist, we really start commenting on a much larger competitive field because it's a bigger circle of music. How do you get through all that noise and that clutter?
Yeah, well, one of the great things about the music industry today is how fragmented it is and how the definition of a music genre is more blurry than ever, and there are more opportunities for people to discover your music as an independent artist and for your music to be placed. Think of all the streaming TV shows. They all need music for the background. Think about all the retail stores you walk through. They've got music playing in the background. There's just so many opportunities to have music discovered that are not terrestrial radio, that are not the more traditional ones that the bigger labels have relied on for so long. So I think that's both a plus, and also the minus is then because of technology and how easy it is, or the barrier of entry is so low to producing music and making it sound production quality, that the competition is higher than ever, right? And so how do you, as you mentioned, like cut through the noise or get discovered among everything else that's out there and all the other independent artists? And I think the best way to do it is to specialize, or like find the niche of your music that can resonate with a very specific fan group, and not try to be, a broad pop star from the very beginning, right? Because the more specialized your audience, the more like your fans will relate specifically to what you're trying to do, which can then snowball over time to become much more popular if the music zeitgeist goes that way. Some genres stay more esoteric and underground forever, and that's fine. That might be the audience that is best for your music. So there's not a one-size-fits-all solution that I could recommend to everybody. It's really kind of, you need to have music that you're passionate about and that can be carried over and expressed through the music to make at least one fan. And it all starts from there. And somebody that wants to listen to your music, share it with their friends, and is really excited about helping you to grow your career as well.
On the show with us today from Los Angeles, California, Paul Loeb, who is the founder and CEO of DropTrack.
You're listening to the business side of music.
It may have been Tammy Wynette who sang Stand By Your Man, but it was actually Nancy Jones who stood by the legendary George Jones for more than 30 years and helped bring him to the light. Now in her new book, Playin' Possum, readers get an intimate look at the country music legend through the eyes of his wife and partner. Nancy